gentleman, he wanted a secondary water stub to his property. We were doing those anyway, so we wrote the letter and said, yep, we'll give that to you, no problem. Because we're running secondary water as part of the project, so we're gonna run stubs to every property. There won't be secondary water up there for several years. But it'll be there, and it'll be stubs, so we don't have to go in and cut the road in the future. Third one, I'll turn it over to John. We've got it in John's hands.
We've initiated the process of condemnation. I drafted the letter here at Blake.
We're sending it first thing in the morning. We have to get the plans. We have a booklet that comes from the Ombudsman's office.
You attach a copy of the plans,
Kind of a
big, real thick letter with a bunch of legal words in it.
We'll send it certified mail tomorrow, and that'll start that process.
And did you talk about the phone conversation I had with him?
Which
The other property owner?
the phone conversation you had? Yeah, we talked about it.
Do you know about the phone conversation?
No, he does not know.
And that's property acquisition, so if that has to be discussed in closed meeting?
Yes.
So that needs to be discussed in closed meeting.
And we are talking, we do have a closed meeting for that.
Because he did proactively reach out to me the other day to try and resolve that.
Yep, excellent. Okay,
So we'll talk about that more.
So that's all the update I have right now are those, and so.
Because his desire is not to have to go to court with the city, that doesn't make any sense.
The good thing about the eminent domain process is at any point in the process, you can always negotiate and come to terms. So we can start the process and still negotiate always.
Okay,
But once we start, we can't stop.
Okay. So
Unless you negotiate
coming to an agreement.
Well, we decide we're not gonna build the road,
oh, yeah, once we start the process, we gotta build.
because then we'll have to pay their attorney fees as a punishment.
build on their own.
Well.
I can strong arm.
I've enjoyed this
Wow.
perennial
Anything.
monthly discussion.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because he definitely was very proactive on it, so let's just discuss.
That'll be it until we go to close.
Okay, awesome, we will.
Oh, wait, no, I wanna talk, because it's on here, and this was on even our little slide presentation, just so y'all know, we had kids crossing on 7300, we crossed them across to our asphalt path, but our asphalt path leads down to no sidewalks halfway down the road.
Oh.
So now we have kids going there and running across the road.
Do you wanna talk about that for a second?
I do.
We had a discussion about
So we reached out, we went and met with the property owner that's on the east side, and he was very amenable to work with. He was excited, he's like, they can walk across my yard, I love the kids, I want them safe. He's like, write up the deed, I'll sign it, let's do it right now. So I said, okay. I've knocked on the neighbor's door 3-4 times. He works apparently 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. He works for the phone company. He's on a well. He doesn't have sewer. I think he's on septic. He's on propane. I don't have a phone number for him. I cannot get a hold of him. Besides, if I went out to his house right now, I probably could.
So not the house with the white rocks, but the one.
This is the one with the
west
fence.
of it. Okay.
So I talked to his neighbor about talking with him. He gave me some pointers and tips.
Is that second house?
Some
300
how-tos, if you will.
Is that second house 300 feet off the road? 300 feet
No way.
setback in?
Oh, this is-
Not that far.
Okay, we'll have discussion.
Now, Justin and I walked it, it's not that far. But so what we could do is, if he won't work with us, the one on the east, we can definitely put sidewalk through. And then when we got to the other property, there's about 5 feet from the curb to his fence. He dedicated 25 feet when he developed in the county. And the road's wider than that now, because we went to a 53-foot right of way. So there's about 5 feet in front. We can go through and put road base in, and we could have a walking path that's behind the curb for there. It would be a temporary fix, and then someday we would
Go
go
through,
through.
finish the process and get it done.
Just so you all are aware, that's just continues to be a problem, and even when we talk to Chief Carr, we just have to fix the problem.
And so, going back to the asphalt walking path that got put in on the north side, we were going to put it on the south side because we had contiguous sidewalk, and we ran into the same issue that we're running into in Houston at that time.
Exactly.
So I want to remind council, this piece that's between the church and the last house that we have asphalt path. Yeah, we're trying to get that solved, but with that and process that we've been laid out, trying to get back to the table to do Houston and Clinton Road. We're adding more costs on it.
Yeah.
So what we did budget for the council, and you already approved that budget, we'll have to come back and do a budget amendment to fund the road, because it's added extra costs. It's gotta be clear. And now you know why we keep coming, hitting these walls every time on these roads. We're going on this path, I've lost
Okay,
count.
let's get this done and get my road done next year.
Don't. So, anyways, item 3.8, before we go down that
We'll
one.
have a
Yeah.
Discussion regarding encroachment on open space. Michael Malloy.
Okay, and
This is what's been giving Brett headaches for months.
a month ago, we brought this before the council and you asked for more information. You wanted to see photographs and maps of what we're dealing with. This is certainly not all of the property encroachments that are out there. There are just a handful of projects or areas that we've been looking at through code enforcement. So, overview map of some of the areas we're going to be looking at in detail. Bugle Ridge Court, you can see the property line here. And we've got a fence and landscaping, and I'm presuming this is probably some type of a retaining wall out here on city property.
How long is that home midnight? I don't care.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, there's,
Several years.
Yeah,
but I mean, do we run into the situation where they've had it so long that they can claim squatters' rights or whatever it's
You
called?
can't do
You
it.
can't never do that.
Against the government.
That's what I was asking.
And then, so explain to me though, how much of Herriman, is that whole chunk all Herriman, or is there a strip of a gully that's Herriman?
Everything
this
left
is all
alone.
Herriman
It's
right
all
here.
Okay, so everything from that black line?
Yeah.
It's Herriman up above it too.
And Michael, will you describe the black line and boundary, it's that property?
Yeah.
That actually was used with ACUB money?
Oh, that's a bigger
So
problem.
that
Yeah,
changes,
that's a bigger
That's a
that
bigger
changes
problem.
things too.
So
We-
this
He's
situation,
got that
at
right on the
least,
title report.
we're not dealing with structures outside of, fencing and landscaping.
But even, I mean, I don't wanna derail it, but even this, my question is, how does it happen? I mean, having put in a fence in my property, hire the fence company, they run the actual property line, they have to do the reports, they come out and run it. And to put my fence in, we actually had to talk to the neighbor and cut part of their cement thing that they'd done over on my side of the property line. I mean, I don't understand how this even happens. Unless it's a do-it-yourselfer, but I don't get this.
Yeah, I don't know that we have the answers on that.
Other than
Yeah.
it's just, just do it.
Well, and as you'll see,
Exactly
that's,
what it is.
a series of what,
I know in another entity,
And the real reason
there was a whole, they landscaped almost a whole additional half acre and put their trampoline back there and their response was, city wasn't using it.
The real reason why I bring this back, you've been clear about your direction in the past, and that's not changed. It's more, once we start going on the path, you are gonna be contacted. And so we wanna make sure you understand the whole
Definitely
issue.
been being contacted.
Okay?
So what situations
We just want you to
are giving you pause at this point? Cause the direction the path has been,
Just
time to rip it down.
knowing that,
There's nothing giving pause, we just don't want you to not know what's happening. So this is just, we're just gonna blow through these so you can see when they can, so if you look at this, his pool foundation is literally on our property. So when he goes to do it, it's going to affect his pool. I know,
That's a
I'm not
pool
saying
right
yes or
there?
no, I just want you to be aware so you can hear the story and you can see it.
That's a pool?
yes.
Yes,
Oh, up here it is, okay.
The blue part right there next to the black line is a pool?
that is a swimming pool right there.
it's hard to see because of the shadow.
But
Yeah.
you can see where the line is.
Okay.
Okay, we can move on, I just want you to see that.
And that could be out just a little bit, because it's not been out, we have not surveyed it, so, but it's with our GIS, which is pretty accurate, but it's not perfect.
So here we've got a handful of properties encroaching Goat Star Lane and Wasatch Star Place along this trail system.
Wait, is that house built on our property?
No, yeah,
What
we'll
is the
zoom in
purple
here.
line then?
This
Guess
is
I
what
thought we had a
the
zoom in.
Sherry, this is resident, sorry, contacted you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, it
so,
looks like it's just outside of that line.
yeah, can you
Yeah.
go back before the purple? Do you have a picture
Yes,
before the
yes,
purple?
yes.
Okay, go there. Doesn't it look like there's not enough setback on that house? I'm just saying that
Right,
this
and
is,
how does
this
it,
has been the problem. This resident said, hey, look, how did my house even get built that
I was
way?
gonna say,
then?"
how did it pass
The
inspection?
shadows there, you're not seeing the actual house, so.
We could check
It
this,
still looks awful close.
we could check the
Yeah.
setback and see if it's right.
Cause that's what cause that was one of theirs, is how did it even get built then? We don't even have proper setback then, if that's the case.
Yeah, mind you, when we go out, you building
But then
permit,
the limit
they
was
don't check the property corners. The building inspector does not check it if they're not there. Does that make sense?
No.
No, who's
When we
checking
get
it?
the plan, we review it and we look at it on the plan. But there have been
They approve
cases
the plan
where
and then the builder comes out and puts it in the wrong place.
that's
Yeah.
happened a couple of times. It's really rare.
So then whose responsibility is
is-
to make sure that
It
that's
should be
correct?
inspected though.
Does
Right?
that
Every-
not fall back onto the city as our
Well,
responsibility?
so there's a
as
lot
our
of things
sheriff?
going on.
I'm not a construction expert, but
So-
I believe each phase has to be
Let's go
inspected,
find out.
the foundation,
Let's
before
go
they start
find out.
building on the foundations.
We
like
have been able to catch them at some foundations, other times a little difficult, because if these corner points are not necessarily active or been removed, and somebody replaces it, sometimes the inspector will look at the points and say, oh, and so I'm not saying what happened at this time. But what I can tell you, in each case, we're inspecting somebody else's work and we're not guaranteeing their work. Again, if they put out wrong information, they'll get a bad inspection. But let's verify, first of all, what the setback is. Let's see where they're at, see what's happened there.
So then another question, obviously this is the one I've been contacted by these people log here the most. And their other issue is about this strip of ground because we do not maintain this. It's a fire hazard in their opinion because all that strip of ground is a bunch of weeds, so they're like, so we have our fences, now you want us to move them even further in and have an even a bigger weed patch, so what is going on? So that's been some of the feedback and the pushback too.
So what we get a ton of open space, and so there is some maintenance, but again, we can go out and look at those things. Sometimes it's good to mow them down, particularly maybe in close proximity to residents. But again, that's something we're gonna talk about. If we want to spend extra dollars to mow all that down, or is it gonna be somewhat native, or how we're going to approach that stuff.
This is also
There's
part
some
of the-
wiggles in there and stuff that's created, cause it's wet quite a bit of the time in that main channel in this point.
I don't know. if
I
you
went and
tried-
looked at it because way back when we moved the trail on the north side of that, Fort Herriman Middle School, to the asphalt path going back to Butterfield Park, because of the drainage issue in that area. It wasn't conducive next to the house to have the trail there, so it got moved up to the south, which is the north property line of Fort Herriman Middle. With that said, it created this area that's not easy to maintain. It's a little steeper slope in there, and it's all handwork. Like no tractor.
Sure, and I understand that and stuff, but then we go back to that point we had a few weeks ago where we decided to abandon some property or sell it or something. It's like, we have this property, why do we have this property? Do we wanna pay to maintain it, or does it make more sense to
Because
abandon it, or what's the purpose?
And I can tell you an honest answer on this one, what's left there, we need for that drainage.
So it's a drainage issue.
So when you were talking about these other properties, for example, like this, there were properties that were always intended not to be the city's, and somehow we ended up with ownership. And so if this serves a greater purpose, and so if you did wanna sell, you could, that's a huge change of policy. This was never, we were surprised to find out we even owned this. And it came to us through some serendipitous way that we don't even get why we would have that. And we don't ever want them to pull their fence back, put it down here. That just doesn't have any value to us. So, however, this is quite a bit different. We always intended to own property line to property line. There was never a time that we thought we were going this way, unless there's a change in the council
No,
policy.
I'm just saying.
I'm just trying to articulate the difference.
Any of those, I'm just take a hard look at each one and say, what's the purpose of this? Why do we have this? If the purpose is because we have to have the drainage, and that's the purpose, we need to own it because we have to have the drainage. each one, I just think we have to have that same.
Is that a small structure?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a shed that's gonna
It's
have to
gotta
be
come
moved.
down.
But, so, this goes more to the, I think, the maintenance of the open space, so whether this is drainage or it's been actually deeded as part of open space, it's part of a trail, whatever, and we've designated it as natural. Well, this, it seems to be kind of the genesis of some of these problems is that, as Clint said, the city's not doing anything with it. It's just weeds. Well, if it's supposed to be natural grasses, to me, that means either it's left completely undisturbed and it's natural, but that's not the case with any of these. That's been disturbed through the building process with all of these, and now we've just left it be as much as we can for the drainage, make sure the slope, whatever, but it's not undisturbed. Did we go back in and replant like a mine is supposed to, et cetera? Or did we just leave it and the weeds have grown up and it's an eyesore?
When the development came through, that drainage area, channel area actually got shrunk up. Cause the property owner was trying to shrink it as tight as he could to get more lots sizes in there. And the agreement was we needed to have that for, cause that carries the water clear from Yellow Fork. Comes down all through Rose Creek, and it picks up more and more water all through,
Say that again, Blake.
the cove everywhere. So you get a good rainstorm, and, we've seen it fill up a six foot diameter culvert.
This is a mapped floodplain by FEMA, and so, actually, the maintenance is supposed to be done by the
Where
county.
does this come out? Does this come out like underneath Friendship and stuff?
So this is a county, so back to what he said, this is a county drainage.
Is there any
Yeah, I'm okay
signage
with that, for
so
sure.
that people know that's what it is?
Pardon?
Is there any signage so that people know that's what it is?
So signage, but it's on the plat, is there?
Oh, so do you want signage out here saying city property, is that what you're asking about?
Floodplain?
A floodplain?
I think for sure on this, we need to understand, for sure the setback of that house, that for sure wanna understand
It's a
that.
whole different conversation, I guess.
Now, if you
Table that
talk
for
about
another
going
day,
in there
but-
and planting or doing anything, we've gotta get a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers, FEMA.
Alright, that's another
Let's go to the next one and start this
Shed
discussion
needs to
over.
come out.
Yeah.
And that one in the orange, oops, sorry, go back real quick. The landscaping is actually out, where they clearly landscaped out into the,
Yeah.
that's gotta go too.
Can I just ask you a few more comments on that? I'm sorry, just because I received this text.
Go back again.
Brought the issue, they said they brought this issue to the city 5 years ago, and the city told them, don't worry about it. Then he says he was willing to offer to buy, if that could be a solution. But obviously, if it's a floodplain, that can't be a solution. And then he also said, it concerns me because it feels like they're being used as an example. He feels like there's issues probably like this all over the city, and how come it's all of a sudden an issue, and why are they the ones that are being focused on? So
Well, sure
did
you
we
are.
all
I
of a
think we just explained that, it's
so for-
ongoing.
But did we all of a sudden start the code enforcement on these things? Is that why we're seeing
So
this happen?
what happened is, we had code enforcement since the beginning of the city. Our code enforcement officer quit, retired, we hired a new one that's enforcing codes all over the city. So this isn't.
Even the city.
So what I'm saying
I'll
is.
say, I've had this we've had the same presentation at least 2 other times.
So all of a sudden now, this wasn't first, it wasn't even second, it wasn't third, this is the fourth draft, and we've hit everybody else, told them they had to pull back. This came to his attention, if he hadn't seen it the first time, it would have been the first draft, but so it's just now, we have a very busy code enforcement officer that now
He's doing
is
his
doing a
job.
job, we've got to
So
hire.
we're
The
just
question
going
is
to-
what's our policy on encroachment?
Yeah.
That's really
So-
what the question is.
As we find these, we're gonna do it to everyone, and have we found them all? No. But as time goes on, we're gonna find them all.
Okay, and that's fair. I just need to be able to
Yeah, they're definitely not
Communicate.
first.
communicate back to him.
But Clint, going to what you said from a policy standpoint, you can't be encroaching on city property. I mean, that's my opinion. I assume that's yours as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, is there any different discussion coming from the other members?
My only concern is if there's an issue where something was allowed, a structure was allowed to be built closer than it was supposed to, the original, kind of where we started with this particular one. To me, that's the only iffy area, is if it was, whether technically the building inspector's supposed to look at that or not, that's pretty egregious and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
My,
this
my
was,
issue is those that have just clearly taken it upon themselves to go beyond what they know or should know Is there
And it's
property
Cause
line?
like my
Yeah.
I have a
pool-
ton of open space behind my house that I'd love to just open up and.
Yeah.
Me too, then we can
use.
have a road.
I will say in fairness to the one with the shed, that person just barely moved into that house just a few weeks ago. They had no idea they were encroaching on the city.
About 1,000
But-
And I understand you're supposed to do your due diligence and understand where your property lines and stuff are for sure.
Right, and I'm sure that they did see something at some point where they went, well, that looks a
Why is
little
that
odd,
way
but
up
I
there?
guess we'll just move forward.
It is a county flood channel or drainage channel, and I can tell you this, about 1,000 feet upstream, a property owner wants to put a 3-foot culvert in, and the county just give them the court and made him remove it. Because his property went on both sides of the stream, and he wanted access, he said, you can't put that out without a permit.
Yeah, and I
So I'm
agree.
surprised they haven't caught all this, because maybe they're not inspecting what they usually do.
Yeah, and I agree, it just has, safety has to be, that's the policy, because if we make an exception, then it's,
It
kind of
feels
our fault.
harsh, even sitting here saying it, it feels extremely harsh.
I agree.
But unfortunately, I think as a council, we have to stand by that decision that our job is to protect the city.
Why does everybody else have to obey the rules? And-
Yeah, I mean,
I hear you,
Well, we've done this
Right.
before.
so.
thank you.
So what's next?
So just a couple of close-up shots of some of these issues.
If you show us some more pictures, we'll keep asking.
So this is, they're just pushing, leveling out their yard and pushing some soil that's starting to encroach in the, on city property. There's a picture of that
Oh, there's the
smaller
shed.
play, yeah, there's the
Well, it's not even a
shed.
shed, it's a little place.
Yeah, it's something
Easy
that
to
could,
move.
could be easy to move, right,
Good, move it.
yeah. Another structure, little
Thank you
shed,
for giving us the direction of the camera space, that's all.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just some landscaping and fencing. That's it.
So then the other portion of the policy needs to be exactly what we're talking about, and what are we doing as far as trying to maintain it, because then it becomes a fire hazard. I know there can be water running down there, but there's a lot of times there's no water running
Well,
down there, so if
I'll
we have a bunch
tell,
of weeds.
I'll tell you, there's a few areas in my district that I've dealt with, personally gotten several phone calls of same thing, well, the city's not doing anything with it, I wanna buy it. My neighbor is, planted a tree over there, can I do this, can I do that? And I've been through this several times, the answer that we've given them is, look, if you do anything out there, I mean, if somebody could show up at your door and tell you to rip it out. It's kind of at your own risk if you plant a tree, or if you plant some flowers, or, cause one of them was, can I just sprinkle some wildflower seeds out there? Well, sure, I mean, if you're asking for official permission, no, right? But if you do it and you water it, there's the chance that we'll come and tell you, or we come through with the mower and mow them all down. I mean, so that area is there, and it is what it is. You can plant a tree, you can run a hose to it, and we might tell you to rip it out. Well, can we buy it? No, because that's designated for what it is. But if you wanna beautify it because the city's not doing it, yes, but at your own risk.
But can they call us and ask us to please come and mow the weeds down?
Sure.
Yes.
Yep.
They can always call and ask.
Cause, we have so much open space, it's hard to keep up with,
Right.
Wendy knows this all too well. But, generally as a rule, even thistle, when residents call and complain about thistle, which we try to keep that out because it reseeds itself very well. We wanna get that noxious weed out of here as fast as possible, but they've been great about, I've had compliments, the resident called in, next day, we had people up there, they dug them up, hauled them off. That's what we will do, it's just, there's so much to track and.
Sure.
It would,
But there's some, like, where I'm concerned with that is if there's areas that we're saying that we're just leaving quote natural and it's clearly not.
It's just
We
weeds.
need to do better.
And if they have
They
an idea
should.
that they wanna plant a tree or put out wildflowers, tell them call us, let's talk
Okay.
about it, let's see what we can do to improve the area.
Alright.
And I want to, in regards to the comment Sherry made about feeling singled out, I would encourage our city enforcement officer to continue to look at these and continue to enforce these all over the city, not in just one particular area.
that's a big task as well, with all the property owners, and so much shells and open space, but usually it gets to our attention some way, like the resident dumping stuff over their fence. That's one way we can pick up on, have that thing and start looking at more and going, wow, okay, that property really jogs out, why does it jog out? And get there, it'll put it overlay it, and we're going, oh, okay. So it's
just from a, this is not, we're not singling anybody out. Whenever this comes to our attention, we're gonna address it the same way.
Okay, so
Been-
one
it's
point,
been
back
consistent.
on the weed issue, our ordinance says you can't have, weeds in excess of 6 inches. And we enforce that all over the place. So we gotta live up to the same.
Yeah, we should have to enforce that ourselves, absolutely.
Oh.
But it's true, I mean, especially when it backs up to homes like that, if you get a fire ripping through there, that could force the house
And
pretty
we would
fast.
encourage our,
Let me tell you,
That's
Simeon
not
is
weeds,
just
John,
not
it's
letting me
native
off.
grass.
He gets on us all the time, and
Same thing.
God, give us a break, that just happened. He goes, nope, gotta force everybody.
so have we beaten this one to death?
Yeah, thanks, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we'll move on to a discussion of ordinance adopting a development agreement for Game Point Development.
Okay, I'll talk to that first for a second. What we wanted to do, this went to planning commission last week for them to review, they really liked it, so likely they're going to recommend approval next meeting, and so it's gonna be coming to you, I'm gonna kind of encourage you to approve it that week, but I don't want you to do it until you see it, so I'm gonna, right now, it's just to show it to you.
Can we fix the language that we talked about?
Yes.
Yeah,
All those languages.
Send us.
Can you send it, because the copy that we got in our packet was not the new.
Right.
And so we've got, we have old copies, can you send
Let's
us
get-
the new copy, current version, all the
Next meeting, you'll
changes?
have all, let's get all the stuff, we'll make sure you get that. So, this has already happened, the subdivision, okay, where's the,
That's the language.
John's stuff comes first and then yours.
oh,
Okay,
John.
good presentation there, Gordon.
There's John's, but John already showed, this is really boring stuff.
Those are the changes I made, and I thought that was in your packet.
It was not.
but I remember seeing those in
Yeah.
red highlight last time we heard something else.
So let's get you the right packet, and we'll make sure
That's
that's right.
right, it's deja vu right now.
Okay.
Keep going.
I'm going the wrong way. Okay,
Drive me
so,
crazy.
so,
That's the new version.
Seriously.
so this is the
Terrible
new
to watch
version.
TV.
The planning commission really liked it, it has, meets all the different things, they're gonna put in the design guidelines, you'll see that they don't have to do the 60% brick and stone, but it describes this for this.
Is that glass on the outside of the big square?
This here is glass, this is a translucent panel.
What does that mean?
So they'll have lights on the inside and they'll reflect through it, so you can see the lights on the
I saw
outside.
it glow. But so it glows through, but it's not,
You
it's
can't,
like,
it's opaque, you can't see.
it's like an opaque, like a
And it-
frosted something.
And it's
Okay.
soft light, so it's not gonna glow up the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
Everybody's gonna be upset about the lighting, right?
Yes.
Are we requiring a lighting plan in this development agreement?
Our ordinance requires it.
We require by standard.
Alright, so that, we're not modifying our current standards, folks.
Just checking.
So, that,
Now you're going the wrong way.
yeah, but I want you to just see the site plan.
Driving me crazy.
So, they did this, this is the roadway, and they have the parking over here, this is the restaurant. So sidewalk, this is where the miniature golf is gonna be. Again,
They
all.
added some more parking up top.
They added some more parking. So basically, these are all the requests made by the planning commission in terms of adding some additional landscaping, changes, additional parking. They made all those changes, the planning commission saw them, felt very good about them. So, they're gonna likely recommend, I can't tell you what they're gonna do, but they're likely to recommend approval in next, Thursday, both for the site plan, the elevation, the design guidelines, and so those will all be coming to you with their recommendation, I think, for approval, and then we'll want you to look it over.
Where's on the eatery, the food on the second part? No, other building. The building up in the corner. Nope.
The second lot.
Oh, we don't have
Oh.
anything on it yet, right?
Where are they gonna have their freight delivered, or like are they?
I imagine it'll just be to the front or the side.
Just after hours through the front like most of the other places.
Yeah, I think it will be just direct drop off here and here.
Okay.
I would anticipate that.
By drone. Helipad on top.
Just get the updated version of the development agreement.
Let's do that. Okay, that's it. I wanted you to see that. If you have some heartburn with either the site plan or the
Those are
Stuff
the
out there.
details. What's that?
The words.
Let's see it. Okay, that's it. Okay, then we will move on to discussion pertaining to the Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District Resolution of Support.
So this is a follow-up to an item that Sherry brought up a couple meetings ago. And this has to do, so this is just information based. This has to do with Wasatch Front Waste Recycling District looking at going to more of a local district where they somewhat separate themselves from the county. So the benefits that that comes with is that basically they can somewhat speak for themselves, make their own decisions without the county getting involved. Where it benefits most is on annexations. The board, the way it is now, has to go through that process through the county. If they looked at taxing, levies, those types of things, they currently have to go through the county. So now it's just basically, making so they're more autonomous, they can do
Agreements
lots of
with
things.
landfills and dumping fees.
Yeah, we definitely wants to lean away from the special service district, and just create that autonomy. I can tell you that in our last board meeting on Monday, Councilmember Bradley was not there previous to that, and so he was there, and he brought that up at the end of the meeting. It was not on our agenda, and he was not,
I'd be surprised if he was.
I would be surprised if it's for.
his tone was not as, he was very cautious of doing any of that. He felt like the county kind of gets used as a whipping post sometimes, and he felt like, there's reasons behind certain things and reasons behind, anyway, I was just telling you, I'm not sure that it's gonna sell smoothly through the county, but we have to have 100%, every board member has to come with a resolution from our city and we unanimously, every single one of us has to unanimously agree that we want to move that direction, and then the county has
Does
to
that
agree on it.
include the county?
They have to agree if we can come to them with that petition and it has to be unanimous, and then they get to decide.
Remind us who are all the members aside from the county.
Oh,
It's a long list.
I think there's 13.
yeah, a lot.
cities that are involved.
I guess we can talk about everything elsewhere, but.
Yeah, so I don't really anticipate, my guess, and it's strictly a guess, would be that we'll be able to obtain that unanimous decision on our end, but there
Once it
might
gets to the
be,
county,
it
who
might
knows?
not, it might hit some road bumps in the county.
Well, I'm supportive of it for now.
Yeah, and that was all, that's why we brought it up, just to make sure that we don't get even any further down the road if we can't be unanimous as a board.
Other than members of the county that sit on that board, is there any other members that would not be supportive of heading in that direction?
I don't know, Shireen Gurbani,
Gurbani.
sorry, I say her wrong, but, she didn't seem like too opposed to it, and she was part of the conversation, she was on the phone during that time, but she didn't have a lot of opposition to it, but, so I don't know, I just know that it'll be some discussions, I'm through to get it through the county.
And it's another one of those things that we it's so crazy to think that we'd actually talk to other,
Well, we're
council
in
members,
a,
even the county, but.
yeah,
we can
well, we're
talk
in a
to
mess right now with them on the 85%, because we have a contract that says we will take 85% of our garbage to the county, and we're not gonna hit that this year, we're gonna hit about 83, because it is so much cheaper for us to dump a few of the loads at the ACE facility, it saves us a ton of money, but we're on the hook.
Wait, and this is a service district that's supposed to save money. This sounds kinda like paying $85 to change your windshield wiper.
Right, but the problem with the county,
Just saying.
and what Jim Bradley's point was, he said that, but the problem is that those numbers were brought, the 85%, the county budgeted that, right? That's how they're figuring out how to make the landfill work and things like that, so it's wasn't just a random figure, and so. Anyway, we already are having some issues, so, just so you know, I'm not.
Might be a while.
Yeah, but the hope is to keep pushing it forward, and the board currently, I think, is very supportive of that, because it's not because any animosity towards the county, it's simply because it's what makes sense. It's like the hoops that you have to go through we have all these little tiny properties all over Sandy, there was over 100 of them that we had to annex, and it was like, you have to go through this big hoop to take care of the problems. And so, and it would save them time, save them agenda items,
That's
so,
what I would think, is that they wanna
yeah,
get rid of some of this stuff.
yeah, I would think so too, but anyway, I'm not sure that we'll go super slow.
Well, we will look forward to finding out what happens.
Yeah, we should have a, they would forward us some sort of a template for a resolution that we would have to sign.
All right, we'll move on to item 3.11, discussion of city council board assignments.
So, I'm trying to think how many meetings it was going, I think it was back in August, might have been the first meeting in August, don't quote me on that or look it up, but it's been a while. Have a conversation with Councilman Martin, as she knew she wasn't running for re-election, to start a conversation with her clear back in the spring. She decided she wasn't going to run, making sure there was a good succession plan of handing off her board assignments, particularly to their council member, because they're both very strong boards and you have to have some good background information and knowledge. And I brought that up a few weeks ago, and the council directed me that it would wait, but then because Councilman Martin's jobs and her duties, he's not able to attend some of the times, and so I asked the council, can I bring it back for discussion and get some direction? Because by fire board and service area do have a lot of things on their agendas that are critical for our service, and that they're doing an interlocal, by the way, too. It's a big deal, and there's a lot of things going on that we need to be in attendance. So she was actually leading. She was leading the charge and saying, we need to look at replacement. So thank you, the council, listening to what I have to say. When I get a chance to update with her, it's the same passion of making something happen sooner than later.
Yeah, and
So that's the main key board that I'm interested in right now for the city. And I just watched that front, which you're already alternate on that one, Councilman Smith.
yeah, I don't, we've definitely talked about it, and just out of respect for, whoever will be elected to take Nicole's place, we wanted to kind of table a lot of the changes
Right.
until the first year, but there's those two especially so critical that somebody has to be attending those.
Chief Smith's goal is to have that interlocal on the agenda for the October meeting.
Somebody has to be there.
Sorry. They're fire chief. So me and Gordon are struggling.
That's news to me.
Yeah, by the way, don't spread that rumor.
It's too late.
That's already
Good luck, both of us, good luck.
Yeah, so anyway, Councilman Dan Peterson, Councilman Smith, Chief Peterson. Boy.
We have name tags.
Let's
get out of this one as quick as possible.
So it's important to have
Y'all got
something.
the gist, right?
We got something. Rumors.
I obviously, like I say, I've been attending, I'm an alternate, I've been attending Wasatch Front Regional Council already. That one's honestly at this point is not a big deal, but really just keep continuing in that. If we wanna make a formal change, we can, but continuing in the alternate role and making sure I'm there that I think is fine either way.
Are you okay with that? Cause I see click, 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 click. Are you okay with that?
And again, there are a lot there, but a lot of those are as a result of the other.
Yeah.
And so they tie right into each other, and again, a lot of those discussions at one, honestly, is very beneficial to have been involved in and have the background to go and have the other.
And the same people, and sometimes it's kind of piggyback.
It is
Yeah.
a lot of that for sure. So again, I don't have any issues there. And obviously I've talked to a couple of you. I know that I definitely feel like that there's definitely some larger items. UFA is a significant board, a significant piece of what we do in the city, and we just need to make sure that we have continual representation there. And we know that we're going to be going through a transition anyways, and I think it's important that we look at that one in particular right now and make sure that we have our bases covered and plan for that and get somebody moving into that. The question only really is which one of you?
Sure.
Say, I nominate
because
Clint for
they-
both of those.
These
Because
meetings
it's
are on,
not me.
these meetings are on those meetings are on the third Tuesday of each month, and they start at 7:30 sharp at the OC. They sometimes go until 11 o'clock, but typically they're done by 9, 10, 30, somewhere, yeah. Just so you know how the impacts are, but, I know that, Shell Service reached out to some of you in this concern, trying to represent us, and so.
So you tell me, I'm always
I've
trying
actually
to
talked
serve on
to
it, but
Chief Dan Peterson.
very good.
And, told him that we'd have this conversation on the agenda, and he understands, and he's supportive. Because of all the things, we have a lot of important items coming up in the next few months, so.
So do you think that that is gonna cause?
Say, I'm
a
not
problem?
saying that, one of you want.
Well, you have to tell me if you think that that's gonna cause an issue. I mean, are you okay
Given the
with that?
issues that we talked, that were just raised, that's one of those things that has to be done, and given prior experience and dealings with other budgets, I think. If you guys want me to do it, I'll do it.
Well, are you concerned about the political ramifications with the other board members because of the fallout with UPA? Let's say how it is.
That's a good point, I'm sure that if my name's on there, it will be all hands on deck, red alert. Jared's gonna want Herriman to pull out of U of A. Like that will be the message that gets sent to them, whether that's our intention or not, that's how several of them will view that. And I'm okay with that, there's just a few board members that we can shake hands and say that's that issue and let's work on this issue, I have no issues with that, but.
Yeah, cause UFA had some big problems, there's no question about that, but they've done.
Big issues.
Oh yeah, issues, but they've done a lot to overcome that and compensate for that and change things up. Chief Peterson was a big player in that, and obviously I'm very naive to a lot of it, I wasn't part of that a lot, but, it feels like he shook things up a lot and got things kind of back on track, so, anyway.
I'll just say for me personally, I expect it to be the same for any of us on any of these boards. The way I look at any of these things is when I go into these meetings is I'm representing Herriman and my job is to make sure that we're getting what we're paying for. And that's the way I would approach this as anything else.
Yeah, learn and get
So,
up to speed.
you know what I'm looking for is just that solid direction from sure more of you, so I can get on the next council agenda as a resolution to submit to their board and the chiefs.
You guys want to thumb wrestle behind City Hall or
You guys whatever,
does
if
it
you
give
wanna do
time?
it all, absolutely let one of you
No,
guys.
you-
Well,
do it.
here-
I know-
here's
I know
my
your
thought,
concerns
honestly.
about potential conflict of interest with your
Yeah.
actual employment and stuff, so I think it does come down to share your right at this point.
Yeah.
What
I mean,
our conversations in the past, I said, if you guys want me to do it, I'll do it.
Right.
If you wanna do it, good on ya.
No, right. I know, I'm 100% supportive of you doing it. I have no problem with that. I was just wanted to air those questions, right?
Mhm.
Is it gonna be an issue? Is it something? And I think anytime there's issues like that, it's about conversation. You have to reach out and say, look, here's the situation, cause it probably will send some ripples through. But then you have the conversation and, I'm here. Every entity has to stand on its own merit. They have to, it's no different than when I
And it is
asked for the
a different-
RFP at the garbage thing, everybody was like, oh, and it's like, I just wanna make sure we're getting what we're paying for. I'm not saying we wanna tabell, we just need to understand that what we're doing is right.
And I agree with you, I think it's a different entity, there's the service district and UFA itself, is the provider, the changes that have been made. It's a lot of work, it's a big learning curve with big things coming up, apparently a new interlocal being presented and a desire to do a new bond, it sounds like in the spring and things, so.
And just similar structures, when you're on that board, you'll have other assignments or governance or finance board, committee meetings, to make recommendations to the board. So there's those other layers of impacts.
It's like a whole nother
Public
job.
doesn't understand how much work goes into your assignments outside our council meetings. Chief Peterson also told me whoever you give me direction with, he would like to start immediately bringing that person up to speed and meet with them, me and him, so. Whatever you decide, I will start the meetings. In fact, he says, if you got a copy of, their budget, he said, hand it to them and get them going. So, and their budget's very similar to what ours looks like, by the way.
Good. It is, just so small.
Very impressive.
The only thing I'd ask, honestly, each of you, is based on your other current assignments and the things that come with them. How do you feel about potentially adding this one, again, as Brett just talked about, you know, which is a commitment, there's gonna be some other boards to it, as part of, or subcommittees as part of that, so you know what your current load is with the current assignments you have, and how would that affect it? And do you feel like you have room to do that or not? And,
Well, it doesn't affect my city assignments, it affects my actual business and my actual life.
Jared, we're not concerned about that.
Which
Your kids don't
we've
need
talked
to
about it
eat.
already, and Brett heads up that in November, when we talk about a budget item, is that I think all these serious, not that any are not important, but the more time-consuming ones really should be compensated. There's some that are in and of themselves,
Take a lot of time.
it really is like taking on a whole nother job, if not more so. I mean, the last one put me in a freaking hospital. For crying out loud, so. But look how much better off we are.
And then, I know he's talking about having this item on for November 8th, as a discussion or a strategy during that meeting, but I'll look for your direction, we'll keep it on that, and we always talk about, assignments in January 1st meeting,
Yeah,
especially during election cycle, to give, council members to have our opportunity to be served on some other boards, to lighten the load if it can be. And it's a good education, understanding the broader.
yeah, I don't know that we would need it on the 8th, cause I think the two that are critical are the two we just talked about, and you're good to keep it on the Wasatch, and then somebody just needs to do the UFA. And that needs to be decided tonight, so you figure out, say,
I will do it. If you guys want me to do it, I will do it.
So, and is
I
that?
just want somebody to do it.
I'm seeing some nods, but I'm not sure, it's not very clear, I don't know if you're going okay or go okay.
Can we clarify, I want somebody to do it that's not me.
yeah, I think that there would be a perceived conflict if you were to do it just simply, not, I 100% think you can do it objectively and do the job, but I just think the perception would be negative
I
if you're.
That comment's been made by, cause a lot of them knew this change was gonna happen, cause Nicole decided not to run. And they all know Clint's integrity and who he is, they said, well, Clint would be fantastic, but people see that as a conflict, you know, being a fire chief of Draper City. But they said, wow, what knowledge do you bring to the table too? So, but, I've watched you all in your assignments, and you're good students, and you dig in and you learn and get educated, and, you make good decisions for our community, so.
Yeah, so it's good with me, I am, especially if for some reason I take on the other board, then I'll feel swamped.
Exactly.
But I don't know if I'll have the other board, so then.
And we have nothing until
January.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the deal. And you don't have a board right now. This Salt Lake mayor thing,
Just-
it doesn't take up any of your
That's no time at all.
Southwest mayors.
we're 3 days into the week, it's taken up 2 days already.
So that's my only concern. If that's gonna swamp you,
That's not all the time, that's fine.
because this is
We've been-
because this one is critical. This one is huge changes in our city. If this has to go right.
I guess that's the thing, that
So,
sense of responsibility, and, you know, like anything.
a resolution on for October 9th. Pass October 9th,
Yep.
and then their meeting will be the next Tuesday. I'm looking at the calendar.
Alright, let's do it, move on. Let's go.
Just make sure that are you good with that?
15th,
Because I'm at 100% happy to do it also.
October.
If you wanna do it.
It's
Like,
too
just
exhausting.
open that door.
Leave the line blank for the meeting. It's like putting my toys to bed at night.
I will do it, and if my health suffers, then you're
John, to get that resolution drafted.
I'm just gonna leave it blank.
That's a good idea.
We'll continue the discussion. You bet you go home and talk
We
to
just
your
need to
wife.
have something before they publish the next
October
agenda,
next,
so.
okay.
So you know the resolution will be official both actions.
Both
Yes.
We'll move on to
Like,
item
Wait, you guys wanna talk about it some more?
That's just who's gonna.
Move on to item 312, discussion of ordinance relating to hunting on city property within city limits.
And just,
all the things I wanted.
Justin came back from taking a little, maybe a little time off, maybe a half a day or something, but he says, wow, got a couple items on the agenda. I said, and you wanna know why we brought this one back? The reason we brought this one back, talking to all of you concerned, that if we leave it as is, we can have rifle hunting on property this year. And we didn't have any deal with, so we decided, better bring it back and get clearer direction. If you're fine with the way the law and ordinance is, fine. But there's a lot of concern by people that we're gonna allow rifle hunting up on city property around the trails this season. Yes, it's not gonna be difficult for communications to, by the time we pass a resolution, about 2 weeks before rifle hunt opens up, do their job, but they will do it as best as they can in short notice.
So yeah, I'm excited to hear this. I got to talk with BWR a little bit today, and there's some surprising things that I think that will be good. Justin will present.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
we'll just go through some of this. Some of the discussion points are related basically to hunting area and discharge of weapons. So some of the things we've discussed in the past is, what type of hunting do we wanna allow? What type of discharge of weapons do we wanna allow? So basically hunting areas, there's several ways we can deal with that. We can specify hunting areas, and I'll show you a map here shortly. Right, we can do what we currently are doing, and that is follow state laws, or we can just prohibit hunting altogether. Discharge of weapons, we can do that regulated through a weapons ordinance.
Do we not already have one?
No.
Chief, we don't have an ordinance about discharging weapons in the city.
Just in a park. It says we can't shoot arrows and stuff in the park, right?
Yeah,
It
we don't have a
says-
discharge of weapons.
It
But we
says
don't have a
something about
discharge of weapon by ordinance. No.
We
It's
should have one.
illegal
Right.
use of weapons.
So the Parks ordinance says
We used
No
to have
carrying.
one, but.
no carrying of illegal firearms, but a rifle for hunting is a legal firearm, so. Or we could just follow state laws. So here's a map, and it's a little more difficult to see than,
There you go.
so obviously this is a map of the city, and what we've done is we've delineated a 600-foot distance away from all development. Okay, so obviously the red line's our city boundary. The somewhat yellowish tan area with the dotted line is a 600-foot separation from all development. The green that you see is all city-owned property open space, and this obviously is the main area of concern up through this area. What we've also done is you can see the blue highlighted areas. Those are the trails, and I've just delineated a 300-foot buffer on each side of the trail, just so you can visualize that. So looking at this, obviously the 600-foot buffer is a state law, so they have to abide by that as it is now. And so what we're looking at is, obviously you can see, even if we do follow an area of outside of a trail, if we wanted to do that, there's still a lot of area that can be hunted on city property or property owners. Now, the difference between Herriman city property and private property is they have to have permission to be on there. They have to have written permission on their person from a private property owner when they're hunting. So if one of the officers stops them and they're on private property, they have to show proof of it, because they have permission to be there. Currently, they don't have to have permission on city property because it's public property. We don't have anything that says they can't be there hunting. So some of the discussion is, looking at this map, there is obviously a lot of area that could be hunted on, whether we wanted to look at allowing archery only, shotguns, those types of things. So a weapons ordinance would look something like this. There's a couple of obviously we follow state law, we do nothing. If we go to an ordinance that allows us to regulate types of weapons, we can define specific areas where certain weapons can be discharged. In some of the research I've done, this is a Salt Lake City ordinance that, oh man. Alright, what'd I do? Sorry, Mitch. That John and I looked at, and this is Salt Lake City's ordinance. So what they've done is they've regulated certain distances. They allow weapons to be discharged within their city limits.
All weapons, right?
All weapons, but they have certain distances. So some of them, on rifles, it's a farther distance than archery and muzzleloaders and shotguns. So if we just look at the one that says no rifle, handgun, muzzleloader, or shotgun using slugs or double-out buckshot shall be discharged within 1 mile of any cabin, house, or other building regularly occupied by people. Then they go further on to say no shotgun shall be discharged within 600 feet, 200 yards of any cabin. So that's a general law. So they've done something like that to help regulate those certain areas. We could do something like that in weapons ordinance. We could not allow anything but archery. So those are a lot of things that we have. So right now we're just looking for a little direction on, do we want to continue doing nothing this year and then bring something back, or do we want to try and get something in place? And if so, what direction do we want to go down?
Chief Carr, what's your opinion of a discharge ordinance?
I think Salt Lake City got it right with rifles. I don't believe it would be an issue to have an archery hunt up there. Archery is a whole different thing.
I'm specifically referring to firearms, because to me this is almost an entirely separate issue. I didn't realize we didn't have a no discharge requirement in the city, so.
We did once upon a time, right, John?
Why did we get rid of it?
The reason they got rid of it is we weren't as populated, and the Bastion property that was in the city wanted to do deprivation permits, and so there were people out shooting.
Well, they're out there on Sunday within 600 feet of my house.
Okay, they wanted to shoot by, yeah, they did.
Jared's house.
So the city council eliminated the discharge permit, and it was been that way for many
There's
years.
been dove and goose hunting.
Doves.
Right.
So they wanted to allow
also wanted to hunt
goose hunting,
birds.
any kind of hunting, and so they just eliminated, let the state regulation handle it.
Well, at an absolute minimum, I wanna see a discharge ordinance on rifles, cause there's no reason you should be shooting a rifle outside of a range in the city.
Well, the state law apparently is what, this is on here, right?
That's
The state law is 600 feet from
They did the 1 mile.
from a building.
Rifles, handguns, muzzles, all that.
Yeah, so this is something that Salt Lake City did as their weapons ordinance, but the state law is 600.
Have we had any incidents in the city, period?
Well, I don't know about period, but
Do you remember any?
recently.
Didn't we have
What do
somebody
you-
that
what
was
do you
shoot
need
down
more?
off the side of the hill?
Asking, can they?
Yeah, that wasn't a hunting incident, though. That was a
Talking
guy
about
that went up there with a rifle and shooting down in the neighborhoods.
Wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, it was an intentional act.
The thing is, have we had an accident? Well, the question is, will we, now that we're more populated and we become even more populated?
Right. And is
Look
there,
in the area that they're allowed to, and given that's Bastion, Olympia Hills area that's in the county, but where they were hunting on Sunday, right next to our houses, like they're hunting in a tunnel. They can only shoot one way. If they move, half an inch, they're hitting somebody.
Yeah, but that's clearly against law.
Yeah.
That's a phone call to the police and they're.
The fields down by the soccer stadium have rabbit hunters with shotguns every day.
So
And clearly that's a violation too, which is
Yeah.
a phone call to the police and they're done.
and I think there's going to be a renewed interest. Do you agree with people wanting to go up in that area and hunt deer?
Absolutely.
Well, I renewed, I don't know about renewed, there's been hunting up there with rifles
Since,
whenever you had more people, my personal preference, I listened to some of the audio of the previous meeting. I say I'm the only one that wasn't here for that meeting, and I hunt. We haven't drawn a tag in 2 years, so I went up to
Gotta pad your entry, geez, come
Gosh,
on.
I've tried every trick that they try to tell you. I just need to call my kids on that. Archery, like I said, it's a whole different ball game. It's completely different.
you're talking
But
like 100 yards for
the-
reliable archery
yeah,
anyway, so
I
it's
mean,
not.
the chance of any kind of accident is minimal compared to rifles. Even if say it's allowed within the law, like I'm sure these people that I'm citing Sunday thought they were. I mean, it is completely unnerving. I mean, where they were standing, it's allowed by law. right? Like I said, if they turn half an inch, there's an accident happens that could have been prevented. Like that's just what you get when you add more people to the mix. So unless there's a real reason, a recommendation not to, I would say allow archery and no firearms. I mean that's the way to prevent.
It's kind of where I'm sitting.
So I like the language that's in the Salt Lake City ordinance, it's just easy.
If I recall right, they have not had an incident up there, have they?
No, and I've talked
Under
to
this
DWR
ordinance.
multiple times, they haven't heard of any incidents, and like Sherry said, we had a good conversation with DWR today.
It's a pretty strict stone ordinance.
When a mile, I mean, if you take a mile radius, even on top of the
It's not
mountain up
gonna be
there,
any.
that covers most of that area,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
I would imagine it would cover
so if
most
we
of
give,
it.
I'm good with a mile, word it that way.
And we can look at it, if it looks like there's no way anybody could get an area within a mile, there's no reason to have it.
To have it in there, yeah.
If that's what we wanna do, is a mile be it, we can look at it and see if he leaves any area for hunting, and if it doesn't, then we'll just not include it.
Right.
And so help me understand then, because, that's a tight time frame, because right now it's allowed unless we adopt an ordinance. that
Well, it's
says
not in season.
It will be before we get going again.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think it opens in 2 weeks, Justin, right?
It's 3 weeks,
Well, the muzzleloader is
Two and a
currently
half.
open right now.
yeah,
I would say there's someone might be out there.
certainly archery, but the
So
general.
I think the rifle hunt, the rifle deer hunt opens, I think, October 20th or 19th or something like that, so I mean, we do have one council meeting that we could get it on, right? So that would be, I mean, I could work diligently with John to try and get an ordinance put together by then.
We just
But
want,
that would be going forward without, I mean, I don't know about public comment, I don't know if we wanna go through that process, but that's what that would be.
I'm obviously concerned about safety, but I'm probably gonna be in the minority here. I think our timeframe is pretty rushed. I think that it would appear that we're trying just to hurry, slam something through without taking the opportunity for public input and public comment. Hunting is, there's obviously a lot of positives to it, there's a lot of things that families do that way. I would probably be in the space of just following state law for the year and seeing and studying it a little bit more and taking the time to go through really a little longer process if we entertain changing it to allow for some public comment.
I think we should go through a proper ordinance process. I think we're gonna ask staff to bring it back, and it's gonna be difficult. There's certainly some pretty good state laws in place. We encourage people to call if they're having.
Well, what if we put patrols up there during the hunt? That gives us time to cover the season with law enforcement on scene. So if there were issues, they can deal with it immediately and get us to next year where we can put some thought into it.
Yeah.
So,
Presence always is good.
yeah, I can
Prevention.
find some overtime money to put.
I'm sure
Well,
you guys aren't gonna mind that.
And when it comes,
Drive around, yeah. So,
Looking at the deer.
I mean,
and when it
I like
comes,
that.
when it comes to communications.
unless we hire another crossing guard, then I don't have.
And when it comes to communications, we certainly can put out the reminders of what the state law is and obviously encourage safety and obeying the laws and those types of things. But again, it feels very, very, safety, I'm always concerned about safety, but it feels very, very rushed to try to jump into
I'm
something.
far more comfortable knowing that we have some officers up there.
Yeah,
We're
and that
comfortable
buys
going
us
through a
time,
process.
Justin, you feel, maybe, you guys are
Is
good with
there
that?
any overtime paid
So-
for council, cause I could.
Ernie, you
I'll
want
even
to
volunteer.
research?
It's for no one.
When I read the language is, we just didn't wanna make this direction on our own as your team, because you are elected officials. And we started hearing people asking, and I'm going, I'm gonna take it back to council, cause I want very, very clear direction, and you're right, it is rushed. We don't like to rush anything, but I wanna make sure wherever it happens, issue come up, that the council weighed in on it, not just.
Yeah.
If we're gonna do it, let's do it right. There is
Yeah.
some risk to not doing anything right now, but
But I
the risk
think
is minimal.
getting
We
the
can
officer,
mitigate
yeah.
that.
We put the officers on the mountain
That's a
and
good
let them prevent that. It gives us a lot of time to get it right.
And
Right, so we're not
anything you
rushing.
want to do to make sure people know you're up there is well.
Yeah, I think,
You don't scare off the deer, but.
we lean on Tammy's team to say, hey, we know hunting's going on. And when you're mountain biking, please pay attention, if there's a hunting season going on. I know they said that there's huge benefits to us too. Part of the DWR conversation was, Murray doesn't have a deer mitigation problem, guess what, they allow hunting. Sandy doesn't have a deer mitigation problem, guess what, they allow hunting, because it takes care of that. And people need to realize that we spend money to mitigate that deer.
Real money.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's some real positive benefits to us, along with grant money to improve habitat on the mountain,
Right.
keep people up out. You talked about how many incidents have we had with hitting deer?
Well, it's gone down dramatically.
Yeah, dramatically, right?
It really has.
So, I mean, there's some really positive things that come from this, and it's not,
I'm gonna pet him anymore.
no petting, no feeding the deer, but, I mean, I think there's can be a lot of positive benefits to our community by allowing this.
Agreed. Do you have the instruction you need?
Well, all I do is very clear.
That's
And you understand why I don't wanna bring it back, so.
Okay. All right, well then we will move on to our last item for the regular board
The
meeting,
best item,
which is however long Brent wants to
this is
talk.
top 10. There's a lot of things I just wanted to throw out at you. One, Jose's gone, they started up Citizen Academy, huge enrollment.
2 weeks ago, yeah.
Great
Yeah,
success again we had the Youth Academy, now we're in the Citizen Academy. I just wanna mention, that's, your residents are engaging that and, having a good time with that, learning along.
Got enough to do 2 classes, so they're just gonna have to wait. We can only do one a year. It's a lot of work, and this one's gonna run 10 weeks, I think, right? 9 weeks. I'm sorry, 9 weeks. So they'll be here tomorrow night, and tomorrow night is specialty unit and forensics. So
You're gonna take,
K9, all that.
I know in the past you guys have used, this as an opportunity, or other departments have used as an opportunity to get some extra training on active shooter and those things as
Yeah.
well. Is that the intent of the
Yep.
department to do the same thing?
at the end, we'll do an active shooter scenario for them to engage in, but we'll also be doing training on the back end of it too, since we have the facility. And it's helpful for all.
And where are we doing that? Are we doing it here or are we doing it?
No, I wanna say Copper Mountain.
Someone else calls it.
It's gonna be one of the junior highs, I think, so they have scheduled. But it's been a huge turnout, it's been a great response by everybody.
Yeah, cut
We'll-
people off.
We had a large waiting list we could turn around and use next year, so
Nice.
just gonna wait it out.
So Sherry already talked about the mascot bowl. What we didn't understand as a city is how big that was. They've been doing about 18, 19 years down in Lehigh area, and the guy that's helped sponsor that, he used to wear a mascot himself and no longer does that. They're very passionate about a fundraiser, and we thought, because the city, we don't get involved with individual fundraisers, otherwise we'd just be here. But my takeaway there was really something different. It was a huge community event.
It was great.
They filled the west stands and then they had the food trucks, and it was great.
It's loud.
It was loud, and there was fireworks, and
We got a lot of.
Really?
In the house.
And, I'm always, when you do a big community success, there's always the ones that don't like this, the noise and sound and stuff. But I saw a lot of people really enjoying getting together for a good cause, and we'll probably, might wanna get a little more involved with it next year, it's coming back here, you're already slating it, come back here in this area.
I know, and no offense, I love Dawn Ramsey, she's awesome, but gosh, it was in Herriman.
Well, if you know about Dawn Ramsey, they asked her to make a few open comments, but she's been a big supporter of
She's
him.
awesome.
She's a big Mustang fan,
She's been involved.
and so
And she lives at.
that's how I got that. I was surprised to see her there too, but wasn't surprised. She had her Mustang sweatshirt on, and
No, she's awesome, I'm just teasing.
so we'll get you more briefed up as that rolls on next year. I was a little more directly connected because that was with Remington's 8th grade team that played them and won in the final seconds. I will say this for the mayor's credit.
Good job,
I
I beat some stuffed animals.
But I can tell you this, Cosmo was an athlete, and Cosmo was making some
Yeah.
saving tackles.
Yeah,
He was a beast.
Say go Cougars.
Say,
Saved
sign-
by
well, then
Cosmo.
sign them up, they need some help.
But you gotta remember, some of these kids, some of these people were in costumes, were actually
Can't
good
recruit
football
anybody.
players in their day, and you had Matt Asiata as one of the running backs and quarterback at times. And so it was not Yeah, the kids felt, they got thrown around pretty good.
It
It was a great event.
It was cool.
So I wanted
When you're in
to
that
share that.
costume, you can hit a little kid and no one knows who you are.
That's kind of what happened too. There was, I can go on more about some of the fun moments, but it was just a
That's
great
awesome.
event, and to see, different kids being involved, it was good. We had some handicapped kids on the field, just a great
I
event.
loved it when Charlie
That community
Jenkins,
thing is always
when he
good.
was doing his concert and he brought those special, whatever, the cheerleaders up on the stage.
Right.
That was just so cute, yeah, there was a really good.
Weaver State cheerleaders came down, I mean, it was bigger than just what I thought it was. I guess I was a little naive, and so we, as a city, might, we be very careful about when it's fundraisers, but it was such a community thing. We also, update you, we got money in the bank on refi money. This is, we have ACOM, we have refi money that we get for buying property. It's in the bank when we take it down to this last piece of property. We'll show you next council meeting our updates about how much property we've actually purchased in the mountain. It's all turning green up there. And, the biggest passionate thing about this one, last one, this is going ahead and we'll sign those, agreements that, Amy knows anything about that development. It's called Deerline Resort, and there were some tax issues when they bought it out, and so he was gonna develop it. So there would have been literally a house right on top of the very peak of that mountain. And so your city now owns, or this last year, owned 100% of that property that was involved with that. That's very, very exciting. So, Alan has good news. Sales tax.
Well, we're up about 16% this year over last year, but I think the big thing is we got our first distribution of the 1/4% that was approved by the county last year, and it was $40,000. So it's if we get that for the whole year, it'll be about double what we estimated it would be. So we'll see what happens, but it was a good start.
And I know the public and you all elected officials and your team here also, I keep saying our team, so that's what I like to call it, it's not staff. It's just kind of like our, what we're trying to accomplish is economic development. And just again, showing that we're having a good, strong increase. But we compare certain cities like Jared saw yesterday at the economic summit, we're still very low.
You guys will see some graphs that I got today from Science Bank initial analysis of the Southwest area. Everyone else is up here, Herriman, stay over here. But it's literally here and here on every single.
Very little piece of the pie when you put our economic, sales tax, but we see it increasing, so we're very excited about that.
For sure.
And we're putting it to good use.
I told all the other cities, you're welcome.
Yeah. Wendy wanted to talk about Black Ridge.
I've been approached by a gentleman who's interested in running concessions there, so I think slushies and ice cream
Did you
bars.
let her know we plan to ban swing?
And, well, nature kind of does that for us every once in a while, but,
It's good you still think that's nature.
I know that previous councils have not been in favor of that, but I told him that I would bring it back to you all and see how you're feeling about that as a private contractor running concessions there.
So we were losing money on that, right?
Yes.
So
Once you open the door, it is a problem.
okay, well, that's good feedback, cause then I just wonder why we were doing concessions at all, because if we're losing money on that.
It's not a money issue.
So the reason we did concessions is we were gonna have somebody up there just kind of watch things and then try to make some money at the same time. What you can do is, a number of cities, Salt Lake City did it, you bid out a corner and somebody can bring a taco van there. You can bid out that concession and nobody else can be up there, but you could bid it out each year, costs us nothing. Right now, it costs us if we wanna run it. So I think our proposal was not to open up this next year.
We didn't
But-
open this year. We
So-
didn't have concessions.
So the idea is if you want to use it, we have the facility, somebody would pay us money to go up there, we can bid it just like any other
But
use.
Pretty much anybody could go up there.
Well, only people you bid, so if they bid, we select it, we put the criteria, and we select them to, and and then
You
they're.
probably the owner should take bids, you can select.
So why do you, help me understand your
Well, you
concern?
don't want food really in your parks, do you? I mean, you don't want the snow cone ban in your park. We already decided that once before.
Got it.
I mean, if you wanna bid it out, that's the way to do it. There is a way to control it that I thought the latest discussion was, we don't want snow
I don't
cones.
want any, I don't want anything to black.
Yeah, I don't want it, I just don't want it to hurt everybody, because we're having a concession, yeah. So we don't prohibit people from bringing coolers,
No,
so just bring your own
you
food.
just can't sell stuff on the beach, so, or,
You're right, but I'm just saying that
On the
there's no
sand.
need for us to supply it, because people can bring their own, we don't prohibit having any food there, right? Okay,
But we do prohibit barbecues, open coal,
okay,
okay.
no fires,
Good answer.
open flame.
I will let him know that we are not
Okay.
looking to do that again this year.
Okay, so their item have is, had a deck meeting this morning, I'm gonna say this afternoon. County Emergency Communications Center, we did vote as a board of trustees to move forward on the legacy resolution, and get that, take a vote on that to select either the two entities and do it the one that did have the contract, sever those relationships, and it was voted not unanimously, but
the overwhelming majority.
weighted vote that we're gonna be versus term. That was our choice many months ago. Move in that direction, we felt very confident, and I started to say I felt like we were just kicking a can. And I told you before, I've been involved with that 20 years of history, and couldn't understand, it's been a long road to get to this point, and a fair lose some of our funding from legislation that was channeled through UCA. We need to get that moving sooner than later. So, good positive move today, moving in the right direction to get one CAD. It'll still take 15 months to get that one CAD system all stood up on one system. So, but that is moving forward, and that will put the whole valley of Salt Lake County on one CAD system. And then when we get the RMS side, most of the police agencies will be going that direction, I think, as well. And then when we start having information on a person that did a crime here, or has issue here, you can track it through the valley and know his history in jail. And this will help our public safety really be better connected throughout the whole valley, instead of not sure what that person's done over in this city or that city. So this is a big step in the right direction. So, you wanna say anything more? Is that
No,
chief?
but Versaterm is said it all. Versaterm is the mass record holder probably in the state. And only because of being in a class 1 county and all the records from the jail are on Versaterm. So, for us, getting to Versaterm meant we got all our records back from our UPD days too. So 20 years of history came back to us. So it's a great move. We'll be able to see other officers that are on duty throughout the county that we can't see now. We can utilize all of their record databases. It's where we should have been 20 years ago. It's just taken that long to put us in that position.
It's taken us 5 years through an RFP process to
yeah.
get a CAD system selected, and then it's not worked the way it should be going. Myself and Chief Carr attended the UCA meeting last week and heard where that board direction was going. They kind of pumped the brakes, put things a little bit on pause for us, through the board of trustees, back to come to some solution and get them moving before they make their decisions on how the money can funnel through from the state. Okay? I'm just happy about it. We're more ecstatic probably than you can understand, but
That's a
hopefully.
big deal,
Millions
20
of dollars.
years.
Sounds boring to
Millions
most people.
of dollars. So,
The last thing was really interesting, that came up recently, and today, it came up, and I got your all ears, right? And it has a lot to do with Jared.
What'd you do?
No, this is, interesting
Depends
enough.
on which.
Jackie called me, she's down at a reporters conference, and, she said.
It has nothing to do with me.
I'd like you to talk to the council about this, because Lieutenant Governor's office says if the council so chooses, they can elect not to have a vote for District 1 because there's no contenders. Does that mean?
Well, by-
Does that make
We don't
sense?
wanna put ballots out with just.
So,
Ah.
so
They're
we
not
we can
all
save the
state
money.
district.
Save the
we
money.
can save money because there's no one that
If the council agrees not to send
would
out.
challenge him.
Yeah.
You can say,
You won by
but
acclamation.
the ballots will probably already been printed, but what you save is mail into everyone in District One, those ballots when it's semantics.
Yeah, why would we spend that money? That
So
would
I
be
need
great.
direction from you, and I know Judge is, yeah, you're doing that, but this lieutenant's governor's office, so it's from chief.
What about
There
writing?
goes my writing campaign.
So anyway, what we'll do is, this is new information,
It's
I
interesting
need
to
to
see
get
who was behind that.
direction, we'll have to go get a resolution and get that done at the first council meeting. If it's all legitimate and true, I want to get a nod, let's do it or
Yes.
don't do it. So,
There's no reason
so
to spend
John
money.
and now we'll get all that legal connection
The writing
accomplished,
deadline should be passed by then.
Yeah, because you have to declare it in advance.
okay?
Well,
I
let's
wanna
face it,
see
no.
my name on it though.
So you don't
We'll
have,
give you
oh,
the stack of proof.
for the
ballots.
record,
Just hand them
for
to
the
them.
record,
Enough of a wallpaper.
you still have to turn in your campaign finance statements and all those things that you have to do by law, so,
I do have a really quick question for you.
okay.
We did submit our letter of intent for the funding program, right, for the WFRC that was due, that's due
Submitted
on
an
Thursday.
application for STIP for,
Yeah,
300
Student
West across
Yeah, we
campus
already
because
submitted.
we acquired the property of corridor preservation.
They're just
We
letters of
applied for a
intent,
CMAC
right?
project and we applied for
So the answer is yes.
the master transportation plan. Yep.
So yes.
I 100% assumed that, but I was like, I'm just gonna, before I erase this email, I'm just gonna ask.
Brett, do you have anything else?
Nope. We need to-
Okay, with that, I'll accept the
We need
motion to
go
go
into
into
closed
closed
order to
meeting.
cover property and litigation.
You did the same thing. Okay,
Motion to temporarily recess the city council work meeting to convene in a closed session for the purpose to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation and the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property as provided by Utah Code annotated 52-4-205.
Done.